Come light it up, I'm ready to go. Come light it up, come light it up, I'm ready to go. Come light it up, Welcome everyone to today's webinar entitled Data Governance for the Modern Age. My name is Ethel Anderson. I'm the Enterprise Data Management Council for the Women Data Professionals, co-chair for Americas, and Global Strategic Account Director at Nexus Cognitive. I'm honored to serve as your moderator for today's session. As context for our discussion today, I'd like to begin by saying there's no doubt that the role of data governance continues to evolve in today's rapidly changing digital landscape. In fact, at a time where data is really at the heart of every business decision that we can all attest to, the challenge is more about not just managing the vast volumes of data we all have, but also ensuring its accuracy, security, and compliance with evolving regulations. And more importantly, data governance, which was once thought of as a back office function, it's now more of a critical driver than ever of business innovation and strategy. And that said, I'm really honored to moderate today's session because I feel that our panelists are extremely well prepared to discuss the challenges and some considerations for all of you to think about, ranging from things like balancing innovation and regulation to managing a hybrid on-prem and cloud environment, and actually also thinking about providing you the guidance you might need for the future as well. So before we review the topics that we're about to explore together with you, I'd like to start by introducing our panelists. So first off, I have Global Data Governance at PepsiCo. Teresa developed and led PepsiCo's first global data governance and privacy strategy, building and managing the team from the ground up. With deep expertise in digital transformation, she has a proven track record for implementing data governance, privacy, and security practices that ensure high quality data to drive business value and profitability. So I'm thrilled to have you on the panel today, Teresa. Thanks for joining us and welcome.
Excellent. Thanks, Ethel. Happy to be here.
Fantastic. Next on our panel, we have Ghada Rashani. Ghada is the Managing Director of Data and Technology Strategy at Bank of America's Risk Organization. She's a seasoned executive with vast experience in data, technology strategy, and project management. She's led initiatives to align consumer data strategy with enterprise goals, which is a very daunting task. And Ghada enhances operational efficiency by really managing risk. Her career at Bank of America began in 2001, evolving from AVP to her current pivotal role at the bank today. So thank you so much. I'm delighted to have you on the panel as well, Ghada. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Ethel, for the intro. I'm excited to be here.
Fantastic. And our last but not least panelist is Laura G. Ellis, Vice President of Data and AI at Rapid7. Her mission is to make artificial intelligence and analytics accessible to everyone in a secure and scalable manner. She is the co-host of Data Mishaps Night and has a long-time blog where she has written about all things related to data. For those of you interested, it's www.littlemissdata.com. And we're excited to have you on the panel as well, Laura. So thanks for joining us as well. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm also excited to be here.
Excellent. So now that you've met all of our panelists for today's session, I'd like to frame our discussion with this observation. Many would say that Gen AI is evolving and being adopted at a much more rapid pace than governance management practices. And in fact, until most recently, data governance was being construed as the police that needed to perform their role with some rigid controls and rigor to make sure that the organization was kept in check. So what is your perspective on how that practice has changed? I'd like to start the conversation with you, Ghada.
All right, that's a key topic to discuss, because you know how technology continuously moves fast. It's on a it's in a hyper mode, right? Especially now with the AI, it's another wave of development, and data governance plays key in any AI development, no matter what the type of AI is. So making sure data is correct, it's usable, it's fit for use is critical. So when we look at the pace that technology is moving, if we don't balance it with a data governance function that's as agile or even more agile, then really we're losing the battle, right? We're developing models on things that are not quite right, on data that's not quite right. So how do we do it? Really, it's balancing innovation with control, making data governance part of the culture. You need more people on the ground looking at the data, finding the data quality issues, documenting, looking at data lineage, making sure the data that's used is for the right purpose, data is owned. So all of those, if you put more people that are representing data and the governance around it within your user community, you're faster to find issues. You have more people looking at it. The other side is leveraging the tools that we have at hand. AI is giving us a big opportunity in enhancing our data governance routines. Maybe live data quality checking, live monitoring, live checking access and breaches. So all of those kind of combined together between culture and leveraging the right technology helps us balance and make sure that data governance is not a police, it's more part of the culture.
Excellent. Thank you, Gada. So it sounds like moving more towards an agile model is the way in which we have to adhere to the evolution at which we're moving. So that brings me to my next question, which is shifting gears a little bit. I'll shift this question to you, Laura, and it's more around, as a leader of both data and AI initiatives, what patterns are you observing with respect to governance as more AI models are being built every day?
Yeah, so I think as leading both sides of the fence here, I like to think of AI has got us our foot in the door even more, kind of expanding on what you said, Gada, in terms of data governance. So it's undeniable, companies right now, everyone's rushing, use AI to increase your efficacy, your efficiency, do more with less, right? And there was a big excitement curve on that, and there still is, but there was this sort of magic around AI right at the beginning. And I think what we're realizing now is that models themselves are becoming a commodity. And it's really where you're going to get that magic is about the data you feed in and then your novel application of the model, or even just honestly your useful application of the model. And so that good recognition that the data is the thing that makes this AI so successful is really a time for us to be able to say, hey, we need to invest in data governance as a catalyst for our AI initiatives.
Yeah, and if we think about data governance in the way it was thought of in the past, it's not like that any longer. We're not thinking about data governance for the sake of data governance. I like to call it adaptive data governance. I think the new practices of data governance are looking at what data sets do we need to prioritize to make sure that we're reaching the goals that the business has? What programs are we running? How do we take a look at prioritizing the data sets that are required for those high level initiatives versus trying to boil the ocean and do data governance for the sake of data governance? I think that that's a very old way to think about it, and that policing is no longer really the notion. It's working with the business to determine what do we need to standardize so that executing on programs becomes a lot faster, because we can essentially create the data governance policies, the standards, work on the priority data sets, and then continue to monitor them so that they're ready for use whenever. And that being able to use them for use whenever, because they're constantly monitored, allows for that quick use and reusability.
Teresa, what you just said reminds me of that balancing that I alluded to earlier between innovation and regulation. So it points me to another question to follow, which is how do you ensure compliance with increasing regulations while also fostering the beauty of AI and data-driven innovation within your organization?
So if you look at the financial industry, the financial institutions, look at Bank of America, look at JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, even though they are financial institutions, at their heart, technology is the kind of the binding, the enabler mechanism. So I can say, I can claim, and everybody does the same, Bank of America is a technology industry. So with that, when AI came into play, it is not about, we're not afraid of the, of the technology. Actually, we want to embrace it. We're not afraid of the FOMO effect, like fear of missing out. But at the same time, we have responsibility. We have the responsibility to make sure the AI is used in the right way, at the right capacity. So when we talk about compliance, it's not a policing thing. It's actually understanding what the technology power is, making sure we're using it appropriately for the customers, our investors, our employees. We talk in the bank about responsible AI. How can we use the new technology appropriately? So to ensure that while we're innovating, we continue to make sure we're compliant. Every AI use case in this case goes through 3 toll gates. One is the use case approved? Is it appropriate? Is it impacting any of our customers or employees or investors or the bank in general or the industry in general? We do a risk assessment around it, a full risk assessment, like not third party, like another entity, like another set of eyes, look at it, make sure it's not risky, it's not introducing risk that we don't have an appetite for. And then at the same time, when we develop the use case, we make sure we're ready to release it. Is the receiving end ready to use it? Is the use case ready? Is the development ready? So again, look at compliance and the regulator as a partner. They are doing that, again, for the industry, for the institutions, for the whole economy. We can't mess on that.
Absolutely. And what you just said, Gada, really, I think, rings true with respect to developing some of those methodologies and the frameworks for how to manage that. So Laura, a question for you is more around, do you use this balance between developing frameworks and methodologies to determine how to strike that balance between regulatory adherence and then leveraging the full potential of what AI can enable?
Yeah, I think pretty much everything we do, we try to look at 3 dimensions. So cost, benefit, and risk, right? So everything we do costs people's time, whether it's actually people doing the work or people integrating the work you've done, as well as the cloud costs or wherever that you're developing it. You would hope it has benefits, otherwise why are we doing this? We tend to try to measure ours in terms of customer value, so retention rate, satisfaction, ARR gained. And then there's the risk, right? And everything, all other initiatives that we would do for software development or data development, you would be measuring risk, but AI has special risk associated with it. And there's a lot of different frameworks out there. And I don't think there's one to rule them all, but there's 2 that we particularly like and that we follow. Is the NIST AI risk management framework to assess and evaluate your models as they go through the life cycle, and the open standard for responsible AI. And they have this really cool framework. It's called Me, We, It. And it's basically just like questions that you can ask yourself as an individual, as a team, and as for the technology throughout the entire life cycle. And so, I said we look at cost, benefit, and risk, those 2 frameworks. And then similar to what Gada says, we take all of those things and we have these reviews, checkpoints, governance reviews that we do at the different phases of our AI life cycle. So when you have an idea, when you're implementing a POC, and then when you go into prod, and then there's, ongoing. So those are the dimensions that we look at and how that we mobilize it, because you have to have the pros and cons in what you're doing.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that insight, Laura. So as I think about this, Teresa, this is directed to your experience from what you've seen at PepsiCo and thinking about the rigor around that life cycle. Are there any best practices to follow to maintain transparency and accountability in the AI-driven data processes you might have experienced?
Sure. I think what's interesting is it isn't necessarily specific to AI-driven programs, right? I think we plan on having a standard protocol for all programs. So here are the basics that we need to have when we're beginning a program. Who are the players? What are the objectives? Are they clearly stated and documented? and then who's going to play what role. I think ensuring that we've got all of that documented and agreed upon, super important for the kickoff. With the fast moving pace of a lot of the AI driven programs, I think part of what we have been initiating is more frequent check-ins to make sure, are we on pace based on what we've said we would deliver? And are each of the teams delivering on their portion of the work? I think one of the more important things, quite frankly, is as we're doing a lot of this work, it's such a cross-functional group of folks that are working together, that creating that team camaraderie, that making sure that everyone knows that their piece of the puzzle is critically important to the delivery of the program. So it's not just a data governance thing, and it's not just a data engineering thing. We typically have cross-functional teams of data governance, data engineering, data science, along with business to say, here's what we need to do, here's what we need to achieve, here's how we're going to get there, and here are the regular check-ins that will make sure that we're on target. So I think a lot of that has to do with communication. And like I said, kind of that one team feeling is what has helped us in the past.
Excellent. So it's not just a single group or a business entity I'm hearing, it's a collaborative effort across the board.
That's right.
So as we're shifting, I'd like this next theme to help our audience members have an understanding now that they can appreciate what we've just covered with respect to some of the framework and some of the best practices you've shared. Thinking about that on-prem cloud hybrid environment that's quite complex and contending with this topic. The question's more around how has the shift to cloud architectures impacted your data governance? And then further to that, I understand that many may have considered AI to be more than just managing data input into the LLMs. They're thinking more about, can you comment on how they should be thinking about the evolution as that continues down the life cycle? So Laura, I know you touched on this a little bit within the process that you already have, if you wouldn't mind starting the comments on that.
Sure, yeah. So we are cloud native. So a lot of this is the same, but just an extension of what we're already doing, right? So just continuing to make sure that for all of the new services that become available in our cloud native environment, that we understand what they are and what unique risks they have available to them or with them. And then evolving our cloud permissions to make sure that, we are having the right controls in place and then the right observability. But then Ethel, you mentioned kind of like those unique considerations on the data in and the data out. And so separately to whether it's cloud, on-prem, or hybrid, we have our data governance policies. And I think with the rise of AI, we've had to evolve those a little bit because there's at least two new things that AI brings to the table. So number one is a new way of applying data that brings with it unique risks. So LLMs, we could always apply our data to AI models, ML models, but LLMs and generative AI specifically brings with it inherently new risk of that data leakage. And so for the data governance, we've had to expand our policies, and that's sort of the data input that you were saying, Ethel. And then we do put a lot of focus on that because that is data leakage and that is very important, but we cannot overlook the fact that the input and the output really, that sort of prompt and response data is also a new category of sensitive data that we were not talking about 2 years ago, and having to expand our data governance policies to include that as a new sub-classification of data as well.
Fascinating. So Teresa, pivoting to you on that same topic or insights, how do you effectively manage or perform your data governance oversight when you've got that seemingly complex distributed data ecosystem to contend with?
Yeah, so depending on the size of the organization, you could have hundreds, even thousands of data sets that you're working with. The size of your organization does